My name is Mark Simmons, and I'm from XM Cyber, and it's an absolute pleasure and delight to be with you today. As the title of the presentation says, I'm going to be talking to you about securing your critical assets by seeing attacks before they happen. So this is a very different perspective, I hope, to what you've seen earlier in the day, around not only blocking, not about blocking and tackling and defending against attacks during or after the event, but actually working into the future, looking into how you can actually address these issues before they occur. So very quickly, let me tell you a little bit about XM Cyber. Our roots lie within the Israeli cybersecurity offensive technology. So our history is around taking the role of the attacker, using our intelligence and our knowledge that we apply to identify those issues before they occur. We are owned by the Schwarz Group, who are the fourth largest global retailer, which is a bit of an unusual collaboration for a cybersecurity company. But this gives us a unique perspective. Why is that? Because as a retailer, Schwarz Group have thousands of assets that they secure that are mission critical to their business. They have financial information, personal information and data about their customers, logistics operations, assets and technology around the globe that they need to keep secure. So we are protecting over 400,000 of their assets globally, and this gives us a unique perspective into what Schwarz Group do. But also our customer base extends far beyond that. We're identifying these issues across organizations from multiple industries, financial services organizations in the banking world, SAP themselves as a customer, telecommunications organizations who struggle with the challenges of multi-cloud, protecting their assets, and all the details that ETCISOs see in the organizations themselves. And what are some of these challenges? Well, let's put a few of them up there and see what we hear from our customers today, and count, if you like, how many that you, if I see some nodding heads, that you see in your organizations. So there is no shortage of information about risk of prioritization, based on penetration testing, which are often very, very costly. You've got high volumes of vulnerability scanning, which are giving you reams and reams of data, but not necessarily contextualized. There is a gap between organizations siloed between IT and security, and the coverage, being able to get a single view of the entire attack surface, not just the cloud, but the on-prem assets and the risk into the OT environment, are a real challenge to unify those together. And despite all the investments that are already being made, all the technology that exists and the people and the expertise, organizations are still getting breached. So we believe that we need to take a different approach to the way that we handle security, to look at the entirety of the attack surface, to look at the vulnerabilities on a continual basis, not as a one-time exercise on a quarterly or monthly basis, but on a continual basis, on a safe way, to take away the stresses and strains and really zero in on the most critical issues that exist, not by some scoring mechanism, but how they really relate to whether they are going to impact and cause a vulnerability leading to your critical assets. So that's a bold challenge about what we do. So how do we do that? XM Cyber is a SaaS-based platform that is cloud-driven, that is able to address all your assets and give you a single view across your entire corporate network. So we're looking at servers, we're looking at endpoints, we're looking at desktops, workstations, but we're also looking at your AWS, your GCP, your Azure environment. And what we're able to do is to create a digital model, a view of your environment, and we're able to, with our attack arsenal, which consists of around about 3,500 different attack techniques, plot and identify and build an attack path virtually across your network. Now, we're not doing this maliciously. We're not applying any real malware in the environment. We are creating the exact same conditions that an attacker would in order to achieve our outcome. And we're looking at vulnerabilities, we're looking at misconfigurations, we're looking at stolen access keys, and a whole host of other issues which, when chained together, can build an attack path from an asset, from an endpoint, from a desktop, through the network towards our critical assets. And if we can do that, we can then identify that across the entirety of the network. So if we multiply this and we look at the organizations that you have, and you think about how many assets you have on-prem and in the cloud, we need to be able to do this across the entirety of the attack surface, because we can't just rely on focusing on one particular element. It's not just about cloud or a particular division or a particular country. Now, the key point here is when you traditionally do this, you provide as an outcome quite often high volumes of information based on CV scoring. XM Cyber's approach is to take a very much different approach by lasering in on those assets which have the largest number of attack paths traversing them. In this case, we see the two assets highlighted in green. And our simple logic is, if we can address and remediate the issues pertaining to those particular assets, choke points in our world, then we'll have the biggest impact in reducing the risk to our environment and increasing the security posture in the most efficient manner. This is taking that list of thousands and thousands of issues and zeroing in on the most critical issues. And what XM Cyber is able to do is to zero in on what those particular assets are. We tell you the attack path. We tell you what the risk is. We provide the remediation information so that you can then focus your efforts and your resources on remediating those assets and impacting and giving you that increased security store. And it's, as I said, the importance of this is, if we could take another example here, within our corporate network environment, we see an attack path, which typically may have a very high CV score. However, the difference in this example is it doesn't lead to a critical asset. There is no path. So in our world, this would be a low priority in terms of the asset remediation and what we need to do. So if we build that across the entire network, we're providing that single view. We're focusing on our choke points. We're focusing on the most impactful assets and vulnerabilities, and we provide you with the information to be able to make those changes efficiently and effectively. And if I take a real-life customer example and apply that in the real world, on the left-hand side, we see one of our organizations and their day one starting point. So this is when we deployed XM Cyber into their environment, and we had an immediate 89% compromise rate. So out of the many tens of thousands of assets, we could compromise 89% of that environment. Now, many organizations, when they talk about this example, think that must have been a bad day at the office for the CISO. Actually, it's a fantastic day because we were helping him to identify those issues before an attacker would. We're taking the attacker's perspective, we're providing the information, and over the course of less than 3 months, we're able to have a dramatic effect on his security posture and down to a 2% compromise rate. We've all invested in tools which take time, many months, often years, to be able to provide value. In XM Cyber's case, this example and many others like it were able to be achieved in a matter of weeks. And that's game-changing in terms of the operational efficiency and the way we take this business forward. So that's great in theory, but then in order to justify the investment, we often get challenged, so prove it, Mark. How have you done this within organizations? So what we did is to work with the Forrester Group, who did an independent analysis of 4 of our customers, a mixture of manufacturing, financial services, insurance, and retail, with global organizations between 5 and 300,000 assets. And they looked and did a detailed study of exactly what XM Cyber was able to bring to the party in terms of return on investment in hard cash figures. Now, this is available in a much longer report, but they've only given me 15 minutes, so I'll give you the one-slide version. But as you can see, investment return 394%, so we're able to get payback within 6 months. A significant saving, over $12 million in terms of reduction in costs, fines, lost revenue, and brand reputation. Reduction in pen testing. We know pen testing can only focus on a small element of a network. It goes deep, but it can only go very, very narrow. XM Cyber is looking at this on a continual basis, not on a quarterly or on a monthly or even a weekly basis. It's doing it on a continual basis, 24/7. It takes no breaks, doesn't need coffee, feeding, or go to bed. we're providing that intelligence for the entirety of the life cycle of XM Cyber. And a huge reduction, which is really the game changer in terms of, am I going to get breached? A 90% reduction in the ability to get breached. So that's a summary. We're putting our money where our mouth is. This analysis was done independently of XM Cyber, real customer data, real facts, real savings. So we're combining the capability of the technology, but we're backing it up in terms of independent research. So let's look at how we address and some of the use cases that we're taking on board and how this may be able to apply in your world. We've already talked about the ability to cover the entirety of the attack surface, on-prem and cloud assets. We know that the challenges these days don't just relate to security within your own organizations, but the boundaries are graying into supply chains, into third-party risk, which often have a greater impact on the core security of your business. Vulnerability prioritization, we believe, is a huge challenge, and using the choke point impact is able to really zero in on where you need to make the most impactful set of actions to do the remediation. Ransomware readiness, we've heard a lot about this already. The ability to narrow that down, see the attack before it happens, and mitigate the blast radius. Provide that executive reporting at both a CISO and a board level, but down to an operational level. To deal with the issues and challenges of mergers and acquisitions as organizations come together and different technologies cause impact on risk. And the relationship between IT to OT security is becoming increasingly challenging, not just in the industrial world, but organizations who are bringing together customer data with industrial, with manufacturing data, and being able to see how an attacker can move from the IT environment into the OT environment and be able to eradicate those risks again before they happen. So let's summarize a little bit about what we've talked about and our best practice in 4 stages. The first one starts with asking and answering, in XM's case, a serious number of questions. What does my environment look like from an attacker's perspective? What are they doing to look at how they can breach my network? Can we answer that question in terms of the exposures across the entirety of the hybrid environment? And how can I take that information and prioritize it for best course? And we're using that prioritization methodology that I talked about in terms of choke points to make sure it's a much more efficient way of approaching these. We're taking the intelligence that XM Cyber provides to give you the remediation guidance in a step-by-step manner so that you can very, very quickly achieve a higher increase in terms of your risk scoring and reduce that risk reduction. And we're doing it on a continuous manner. So we're able to look at the changing network as new vulnerabilities exist, as your organization changes in terms of cloud adoption, in terms of spinning up new services, in terms of M&A, and all the other changes to your network that are going to address on a day-to-day basis and put your network at risk, as well as that of the perimeter and the third parties. We can bring that together and do it on a continual basis. So I hope that that's been a useful 14 or 15 minutes. I think my time is nearly up in terms of how we do this. The platform is focused on continuous exposure management. So this is bringing together a lot of the elements that you've seen under the world of attack path management. If you'd like to see more, and I hope you do, then please come and visit us. We're outside. But for the moment, I thank you very much for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed the presentation.